And good morning. How's everyone this morning? Y'all are a quiet bunch today. Just wait, you'll wake up. Well, I have the pleasure of introducing our first presentation, our first presenter. Although she told me not to read her bio, I'm going to read it anyway. I'm going to defy my supervisor and read it anyway. Ms. Jenifer Schaye is General Counsel for the Louisiana Legislative Auditor. She is a graduate of the University of Dallas and St. Louis Law School. She's practiced law continuously for the last 45 years in Texas and Louisiana. Jenifer has substantial experience in the governmental arena. In her capacity as General Counsel to the Louisiana Legislative Auditor, Jenifer advises on public law issues and laws relating to fiscal matters, ethics issues, and all public laws which impact political subdivisions and the audits of political subdivisions on the local and state levels. In addition, Jenifer represents the Louisiana Legislative Auditor and staff in those matters where they're called to testify and/or to produce records for further inquiry by state and federal courts. She advises the Louisiana Legislative Audit Advisory Council on relevant audit law issues. Because of her governmental background, Jenifer has a broad knowledge of the processes of government and the relationships between the various branches of state and local government. Please welcome Ms. Jenifer Schaye.
Thank y'all very much. I was thinking as I was preparing for this that I think we've been doing local government CLGE this for about 10 years. I think it's about 10, isn't it, Diane? 2015. 2015, so I'm off, it's about 9 years. It'll be 9 years in January. And when we first started, I was an auditor, Daryl Papera, who had the idea that it would be important that we go out into the communities and talk about what we were talking about at various talks and on the phone to people. And it seemed like really a task that was worth the effort, and it has been. And then when COVID happened, I think we all thought, oh, wow, what's going to happen now? And actually, COVID did us a service in some ways, not always, of course, but in some ways, because we then figured out about live streaming and that we could talk to those of you who are hearing me as you sit in your various offices all around the state. And I just think that's wonderful, because I am a great admirer of all of you who work in local government. When we first started CLGE and it looked like it was going to be a success, Tom Cole, who was then our first assistant, said to me, he said, Jen, this is going to make you all rock stars. I thought, I'm not real good on current stuff. And I go, rock star? No, I don't think. But you know who's really the rock star in all of this is all of you, because you're the ones who come, who listen, and then ask us questions during and after. And I'm so happy that you give us the opportunity to serve with you. And I often say, as I begin, and you've heard me, you know, maybe ad nauseum, but I hope not, 225-339-3871. If you don't write anything else down today, write that. 225-339-3871, because that's going to put you in to when you need legal assistance. I'm sure Diane and others will give you their numbers. But when you need legal assistance, that's it. And I have 2 lawyers who deserve credit because they help me always on these presentations, and the 2 assistants that I have, Pam Mixon and Kathy Ballantyne. And we make sure that your calls get answered. And, you know, I always say, if we don't call you back in 2 working days, then you're going to do 911. You know, because otherwise, you know, something bad happened to us. But that said, I want to just again tell you that we're going to have a conversation today about public bid that Diane in the group asked me to do again, and I said, oh gosh, I've done it so many times that I have to figure out a different way to do it, to talk to you about what I think is really important in government, which is how we purchase and how we move. Do I need to move this? Oh, what happened here? I'm sorry. It advanced too quick.
I'm gonna reset it here. You can just put it down.
Okay, go ahead. All right. Now try. Sorry. All right, we're on that. So we're going to be talking about public bid from a slightly different perspective. We're going to be talking about it, I hope, in a rather interactive way, because in my experience, I'll be at the auditor's office 24 years in January. Public bid is the thing that causes issues, because what is it? It's talking to people, buying things, and dealing with the money, the public money. And you are, and I, are fiduciaries and trustees of that money. So what we're going to talk about is a hands-on, how do we handle various public bid situations. And if you printed the slides that were sent earlier, you'll see, hey, I'm missing some slides. That's by intention, because I wanted to give you the scenario, have you think about it, and then give you some key points that you can bring back and use over the next year or whatever, so that you can address some of these situations. Does that make sense? Now, I'm the kind of speaker who doesn't mind if you stop me. Judy's going to tell me when I have so much time left, and that's fine. And I'm not leaving today, so if I don't finish everything, you'll be able to come up and ask me. So if you're out in the land of Louisiana and want to ask a question, then you'll ask it through the chat. If you're here, just wave your hand, and if I don't see you, Lizzie will or Judy will, somebody will tell me stop, and I don't mind at all. I'd like that. After I talk about public bid, I'm going to talk somewhat, maybe in a real overview kind of way, on some of the new laws that are impacting local government entities. Kind of a real high level, but I am going to talk about in some detail, and I want you to know the significant changes in the open meetings law. And many of you may have gotten a letter from our leader, Mr. Wagasback, yesterday or the day before, where he describes how we wanted to inform you about the open meetings law. At that point, I have to say to you now, and I'll keep saying it, if you put 10 lawyers in a room, you get 30 opinions, all right? So today you're getting the opinion of Jenifer Schaye, but there are other opinions, and the Attorney General, he's the guy, or she is the person. So we follow the Attorney General's rules. What I'm talking to you about is from the auditor's perspective, and when Mr. Auditor comes in your office, or Ms. Auditor, this is what they'll be looking for. So let's talk about now, what is the public bid law and why do I have to follow it? First of all, I'll say to you, it is the framework of all that you will do in your daily work. Even if you're not the procurement person, if you're the clerk, it's still the framework. It is a law that's put there so that there is equity. I call it the anti-brother-in-law law. Because with this, you're doing arm's length transactions. You're not giving it to your friend Judy, your brother Marshall. You're doing it in a fair way, and you're looking at what's the best price that I can get. Now, there are also other considerations. Who's the best person to do it? What's the quality of work? And so forth. But I can't tell you that it's not an essential part is price. What does it cost? Now, when we say that, you go, well, sometimes it costs more on the state procurement list than if I went to Lowe's. That might be true. I can't explain all of those nuances. It's when they bid it and how much they bid it for and just supply and demand. But what the basic law, people will say, okay, tell me now, because they don't want me to bid it, tell me what's the law that says I have to bid it? All right, second thing you might want to write. Article 7, Section 14 of the Louisiana Constitution says that you shall not loan or gift or encumber in an improper fashion public money. So that's the law. So your boss walks in, he said, buy it. And you say, sorry, Mayor, I got to publicly bid it because it costs more than $60,000. Buy it. Say, call Jenifer. She said the Constitution. And I'm on the other end of the phone, so I won't get hurt. So you can do that. So you want to make sure that you're there. Here's the other part of the framework of public bid, and I said it at the beginning, I'll say it in the middle, I'll say it again and again. It is that we're acting in public bid like you are the fiduciary, you are the trustee of the public's money. Now, if I want to buy my little multi-poo Happy, the best LSU jersey there is, that's me, right? But if I'm buying pencils for the legislative auditor's office, I have to be aware that's not me. That's public money, somebody else's tax dollars. That's the difference. You can do whatever you want with your own money, but this is the public's money. Now, even as I say that, I know there's a tension here, and the tension is I want you to feel like this is your business. Louisiana is our home, but at the same time, I'm kind of a tenant, and the money is held in an open hand. Now, let's talk about a scenario that we have. Here's my guy that's working with us today. His name is Christian Dredd. This is Christian's first day of work. And you know what? He has no experience in government. However, Victory Village, that's where he lives. I don't know what parish it's in, but Victory Village has made him the chief financial officer, the procurement agent. Now, what I want you to think about right now is, what do you think Christian has to consider as he begins to understand the public bid law? Just think about it to yourself, or you can talk about it with each other, or if you're listening to us or watching us, somebody's in your office. What does he have to think about? It's his first day, and they want him to know about public bid. What should he be thinking about? You're walking into his office. You say, Christian, let me tell you, young man, here's what you got to know. You got it? Thinking of it? Okay. So let's see if some of the things you're thinking of is what we think. And Article 7, Section 14. I'd have that when I got to the auditor's office in January of 2020. I didn't know what the heck Article 7, Section 14 was. I walked to my car one night that first week, and this guy said, are you going to instruct us? This was one of the management people in the office. Are you going to instruct us on what Article 7, Section 14 is? I couldn't wait to get to my car. I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. Man, I went home, I looked it up. I said, I better start reading. So that's the first thing I'm going to be showing Christian. I'm going to show him Article 7, Section 14. I'm going to talk to him about loans. I'm going to talk to him about cooperative endeavors. And I'm going to tell him, Christian, public bid law is a prohibitory law. It's like you can only do what it says you can do. You cannot improvise. This is not a karaoke kind of situation. Only what it says you can do. And I'm going to tell him, I hope that I'm going to tell him, it applies to materials and supplies, and it applies to if we go to build a building. And poor Christian, he might quit at that point. He says, really? What am I going to do? How am I going to learn it? I'm going to say, go to the auditor's website. Go to the auditor's website under legal assistance, and you're going to see frequently asked questions on public bid. Now, a lot of times people will say to me, that's, we love y'all's site. How'd you think of it? I'm going to tell you the secret. You know how we thought of it? Because we didn't know the answers. So as we began to develop that about 18 years ago, well, maybe about 22 years ago, as we began to develop it, the group of us who were developing it said, what do we need to know? What do we need to know to answer questions? And so we have tried to make that public bid FAQs be as user-friendly as we can. And if you ever think it isn't user-friendly, you call that number that I gave you and you say, it doesn't work, I don't understand it, or the link doesn't work, but we throw into there AG opinions. I urge you, as you begin to understand public bid, like my friend Christian, as you begin to do that, read as many public bid AG opinions as you can tolerate. Some of them will put you to sleep at night. You won't need white noise or anything. But try that. Then you're going to tell him that there is something called the State Procurement Code, which is kind of a exemption, if you would, from the public bid law. You say, wait, you said it's so important, and now you're going to say we can get out of it? Why? Because the state office has already done the public bid process for those items that are on the state procurement code, whether it's a fire truck or an automobile or cartridges for your printer. That's why it's not that you're out of the public bid law, it's that they've done it and you can adopt the state procurement code in whole or in part. You say, every single thing, Christian says, every single thing I do, I have to do it. Got a question?
Yeah, Jenna.
Whoops.
Sorry about
She's
that.
yelling at me.
So I have two questions. I'm going to start with the first one is, are there differences for public hospitals?
Yes.
Okay.
There are differences, but you have to go and you have to read it. I think they're probably talking about the purchasing issues, and there are differences, but the statute will explicitly say what hospital districts can do and what particular hospital districts can do.
All right, and our second question is, I'm preparing to purchase new equipment. However, I was told that I did not have to bid if I own the license, even though the refresh of my current software is more expensive than a new system. Can I still upgrade without a bid?
Well, I'm going to ask that person's online. I'm going to ask that person to call me. Why? Because we're going to talk about telecommunications equipment and what the combination of buying software and licensing. The Attorney General says you look at it and you see what's the real character of that. In other words, is it really a licensing situation and it's all on the net? That's probably a service. But if it's buying equipment and then getting it installed, that might be a purchase of materials and supplies. but those are good questions. $250,000 plus if you have a public works project. 0 to 30, no public bid is required for materials and supplies, but Article 7, Section 14 says you got to be concerned about what you're spending. And 30 to 60, you're going to get 3 quotes. 60 plus, you're going to do a regular public bid. In those FAQs, we have it all there for you. Now, Christian, he came back for day 2. And they told him to buy cars and to fix the building. Poor Christian. He said, I can't wait for lunch. What can I do? So he's got to buy movables, that's materials and supplies, and they told him to fix the building. That, on its face, you would say, that's a repair of the building. Or is it a service? Let's talk. Let's think about it. Materials and supplies, any that's not defined in the law, but it's anything that moves. Public works is the construction or renovation of a building or a space that's used for the public. Could be a park, could be a dog park, could be a city hall, could be land. It's a lot of things. So you say, okay, poor Christian. I don't think he bought a Mustang. If he did, they're going to have cameras out there while looking at that. So let's see what happens next with Christian. Well, on day 3, then in the office, he's got to purchase the 2 vehicles for Victory Village. He's thinking of going down to the Ford dealer. And making the purchases. They right down the street. After he finishes that purchase, he's thinking he maybe will hire his uncle to make that major repair at City Hall that the mayor wants. Now think about that. Can he walk down the street to the Ford dealer? They got a lot of shiny cars over there. Can he do that? So what should he consider in the car purchase? And how about in the building repair? What should he consider? Think about it. I had a guy call me once. He said, well, recently, he said, look, we got these 2 car dealers in our parish. They both want to sell us cars. What you think? I said, I think you ought to bid them. Oh, thank God, he said, because I don't want to pick one or the other. That's the beauty of public bid. You're going to put it out there for bid, and the one that gives you the best price. You don't have to worry about it. But let's see what happens in this. This is what I hope you'll look at today and later on and think about. First of all, you cannot split to avoid thresholds. Splitting is a concept in public bid law. Had a sheriff's office, they want to buy 50 cars. COVID held them up, big parish. COVID held them up. They said, now we got to buy 50 cars. Can we do that? If you can get someone to bid on the 50 cars, or you can buy the 50 cars off of the state procurement list, answer yes. Should they split it? No. Can they have deliverables at different times? Yes. Does that make sense? So when you're purchasing vehicles, what you cannot do, okay? What you cannot do is trade in. You cannot do trade-ins. You can decide how much money do you have to spend, and you will spend that money in accordance with the public bid law. Make sense to you? So once you do that, you're going to look at the quotes and what you need to do. Now, we have the thresholds. Hardly ever are you going to be able to do that on under 30,000. There is a new amount, a different amount for police cars, which is a new amount, is $40,000. If you're going to buy a police vehicle, only one, then there's some special provisions if it's 40,000 or under. And we have that all detailed out. Thank you.
Somebody asked a question about the police vehicles. Do you know if there's a plan to increase that amount?
Well, I hope they do. I don't know if there is. There's going to be a whole new legislature in the new term. I hope they do, because when they change the amount to 60, 30 to 60, we were hoping they would change the police vehicle amount rather than go from 20 to 40. We were hoping they would go to 60, but they didn't do that. So we'll be watching that in the legislature and see what happens on that. That would make it a lot simpler for everybody.
And one more car question. With the lack of inventory for vehicles and equipment, a lot of people are having to buy used items. Can you speak to the quote process used for vehicles? Like, do they have to set up parameters for the maximum number of miles or year, model range, or things like that?
I don't think that is, I know it isn't detailed in any AG opinion or the law, but that's smart to do that. That again goes back to Article 7, Section 14, the best use of public money. And that would all be put in the bid package. So here's the deal. You can't negotiate after you put together the bid package. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the bid package is exactly what you want. That's the one time when you don't want our friend Christian to do any rushing. Yes, sir.
To get vehicles was a difficult process, especially during the COVID time. So Louisiana requires a dealer license.
Yes.
What if I had to buy this vehicle? I found vehicles I need
Yep.
out of state. Is there any option that we could use where that we can buy those vehicles out of state?
They have to come in and get what's required in the state, and I would have that in my bid package.
Yeah, but I can't find them in the state.
No, you can buy them out of state, but you have to say to the out-of-state dealer, you have to fulfill all of the Louisiana laws in regard to the registration and their own license to do business in our state. Yep. It's becoming less hard to find cars in state, you know, as we move through it. But yes, you still have to, you can put that, we had people putting that in their bid packages initially during COVID, some requirements so you could go out of state. Okay? The other thing you can do is fire trucks. Oh, fire trucks. Fire trucks are very difficult to buy today. And you have to you can look on the state procurement code list, they have some. But the other thing you can do with fire trucks and other vehicles is piggybacking. And so if someone else has done it and there's some other vehicles available, that contract is still viable. And you know another city, another parish that's done it, you can use that. That's really important to do. It doesn't matter if it's a red car or a white car, but it has to be an identical vehicle other than something like a cosmetic difference. Okay? I don't think I'm doing very well on time, but I'm going to keep going. Public Works also, when you look at Public Works, you're going to want to be looking at everything gets included in that. Labor and materials are all included. You say, well, we're going to use our own labor for part of it. That's fine. If you are, then what's the cost after that? Here's what I see as a big issue on public works projects. You have to make sure that when the council or the board of aldermen or your commission approves this public works project, that you have the money available to spend. That's important. If the building renovation is going to cost $300,000, you have to have the $300,000 available to do. Can you have multi-year contracts? Yes, but you anticipate and estimate that you will have the monies available in the multiple years. You always have in your contract a non-appropriation clause so that you can move away from that in case there's a problem with monies. So that non-appropriation clause is critical. If you're going to do a public work, I'm going to tell you the best thing you can do for yourself and for your parish, and I would tell Christian this, or your city, is to look at how we've broken that down in the FAQs. So it'll say exactly what to do when, so that once you get that public bid out there and you've accepted somebody, you can do a mirror image of the contract. Now, some lawyer's going to charge you to do the contract, and I'm all for full employment for lawyers. But I want to tell you, if you've done your public bid carefully, it's going to be, that contract's going to be a mirror image of what your bid is. You can't change it in the contract. Remember, public bid doesn't provide for negotiation. So here we are, we're moving along. You have a question?
Yeah, how long can you piggyback on someone else's contract? How long is that open for?
You can, how long can you the contract has to be done, their contract, within the previous year. So, you know, that contract has to be viable and active when you're piggybacking. So that's a good question, because I remember some guy said, I'm going to piggyback, called me up and said, you said piggybacking's okay, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, I'm piggybacking and people are fussing at me. I said, really, why? He said, well, the contract I'm piggybacking on was done 5 years ago. No, that doesn't work. It's one that's a viable, active contract or has been active within the last year. So you're going to work through that. Yes, ma'am. Wait, go. It's the date they signed the contract. It's the date I would take. I would take the October date, because that's really when the contract began. That's a good question. Y'all all heard that? You want me to say that question again? If a board accepted a contract in March but they didn't execute the contract until October, what's the viable date on the contract for piggybacking? I say October. I'm not sure if that's ever been addressed directly by the Attorney General, but that makes sense to me, because piggybacking is to be on a viable contract that has occurred. Yes, thank you.
And what about leasing of vehicles? Is that considered a service, or is that part of the bid process?
Leasing can be done without the bid process unless there's an option to buy. If there's an option to buy, then that's got to be subject to the public bid. Okay? Piggybacking? Piggybacking means that somebody else bought exactly what you wanted. Exactly what you wanted. And you say, they did the whole public bid process right. They certify they did it right. The vendor says, I'd be happy to sell you another one like that. Then you can piggyback. That's what piggybacking is. Piggybacking, you know, sometimes we use so many, I don't know, stilted legal terms. I'm so glad we use piggybacking. You know what I mean? It's like, you did it, I can do it. We're going to work together. And I say this, I can't stand And I know I got one lawyer in the room that I really respect, the DA of St. John, and she and I have talked about, I just want to be a normal person with you and explain stuff to you. I can't stand lawyers who just talk and they don't really understand. They're saying whatsoever so many times that you forget what the subject of the sentence was. Is that right, Bridget? That's it. That's it. Change orders, I want to say, in this is also important in public works. Can you ever change? Can you ever, you have to do something different? Obviously, yes. But the change order, here's the simple rule. It's got to be within the scope of the contract. If you're change ordering something in this room because those lights didn't work, that's fine. But if you change ordering something, oh, it's that way, across the street at the university, that's not a change order. That's a new project, okay? So change orders have to really be within the scope. You say, well, something very dramatic happened. Still, is it within the scope? If it's within the scope, then you can do it. If it's not within the scope, you got to rebid it, or if it's something under the amount, you have to rebid it, but it's not part of this project. Why do we do that? Because we go back to our principles. It's equity, it's anti-brother-in-law. If Judy would have known you were going to do that, she would have bid differently. You can't cut her out in the middle. You can't say, I really like this contractor. I really do. So I'm gonna let him build 4 more buildings. That's cool. If you really like him and he's really that good, let him bid on the 4 more buildings. All right? We say, things are not, you saw it, I've moved it. You never have that. Things are not going as planned. Parachute didn't open. I'm in trouble. What am I gonna do? Here's the first thing. This is a very significant legal concept. Don't panic. Do not panic. I always say, as a lawyer, when I first went to court, man, I was so nervous. Then I watched mostly men, because they didn't have many women in those days, mostly men, and they didn't panic. And I thought, well, what the heck? I can do this. Just keep thinking. Don't let yourself be pushed. Don't rush. And call somebody who knows, who's been there. So, first rule though, don't panic. We can figure it out and we can keep you legal, provided you tell us. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a local statute for locals where the funds do not get appropriated so they can terminate contracts?
Where the funds do not...
If a local government can terminate or states can terminate contracts when there's not appropriation of funds, is there something similar for local?
It works for everybody in the state. The non-appropriation clause should be in everybody's contract. So you thought you were going to get X grant from the state, a water grant, a sewer, money to repair the sewers. You thought it, you had it in your budget, the head of DEQ told you were going to get it, and you didn't get it. You're okay if you have a non-appropriation clause in your contract because you didn't get the money. Now, you can't use it because you don't like the lady in the jacket. That's not it. It's really you didn't get it.
And how many change orders are allowed on a job? If a company comes in with a low bid and makes lots of changes, how does that work?
Well, it's not when they decide to change it, it's what needs to be changed because of the work. Now, that's an important thing to think about, that it's not, change order is not put there for the convenience of the contractor, it's for your building getting built properly. So there's no limit to the number of change orders, but you do have to, if you do change orders that are at 10% or $10,000, of the bid cost, that has to be recorded, or if it gets up to 20% of the aggregate cost, it has to be recorded with the clerk of court. I always advise you anyway to make sure that your contracts are recorded. I didn't say it, but your contracts are written. We'll talk about that in a minute, but your contracts have to be real contracts, okay? Change orders have to be written. That's in the law now. Change orders have to be written. Okay, let's look at Christian again. He's week 2. Chris been told there have to be major changes. And in addition, the contractor wants to make Christian a deal. Now, I've kind of talked about that. What steps must he take to change the contract? Can he do the additional building? I kind of gave you the answer, but let's go. Here we go. The change order, it's got to be within the scope of the original contract. And if it's not, then you got to be a new bid. Change orders have to be written. And that's when you're going to reflect the timeliness of the order. Now, my recommendation is that when you do a change order, that you also amend the contract so that there's no writing over here and change order over here. It's really simple. You amend the contract, same language. I thought this foundation was X, it's really going to require Y. That's in my contract, in my repair work or my construction work and the deliverables. Does that make sense? So everybody's reading one thing only. So there's always going to be parameters to the change. Yes.
And is there a penalty for failing to record a change order?
Is there a legal penalty? Probably nothing that's enforceable, but is it going to cause you a problem? Yes. Because guess who's watching all of this? The curmudgeon in your town. They're watching. If you don't get it right, that's going to cause you a problem with them. Here's the other problem. It's going to cause confusion as regards payment. How much do you owe them? Do you owe them what was in the original contract, or do you owe them what the difference was because you had to change it? And what costs people money is litigation and controversy. So me, I like it to say, if I'm working really hard at the beginning, we're doing real well at the end, and there's less controversy. The auditors are not asking you questions either at that point. So in this new scenario, you're looking at the buildings and you're changing the contracts. Here you go. So if it's outside the scope, they can't do it. They can do it, but they might have to bid on it. Or you have to at least have something that shows that you opened it up to public review. Yes?
So what if you decide that your foundation, your architect or engineer, whatever, says that your foundation now isn't gonna work, and you have to change the way that you're doing your foundation, but you didn't bid doing it that way? How, is it okay for the engineer, architect, whatever, to negotiate with the contractor a price on that? Or how do you determine the price on the new way to do it?
Yeah, you have to go with the advice of your architect or engineer. So in that sense, you're getting close to a negotiation, but it isn't outside the scope because it's the same building. Now, that's why putting it together initially is really important. My bottom line answer is, can you change it within that bid? Yes. Do you have the money to pay the additional amount? You'll have to see that with your counsel to see if you have it. Those get to be very difficult questions, but I don't think it's outside the scope. Sometimes people have had to stop the building because they just They say we don't have enough money. But that's why it's really important, and I know I've said it 5 times, I want to say it again, do more work at the beginning. Like they had buildings I've seen where, you know, they do the bid and it's 5 million, the ultimate cost is 40 million. That's ridiculous. You know, that to me says there wasn't a lot of work done at the beginning.
But you still have to change the contract, right?
Yes, yes. Yes.
And what would warrant a change order?
A change order is when, like we just had the question, a foundation problem. Change order, that would warrant a change order. The fire inspector comes in and he said, you don't have enough exit signs. That's a change order. It can be something insignificant or something very significant. Ingress and egress is a big thing in public buildings, providing for disabled people. Did you do that right? You know, a change order is not, well, we decided we were going to have carpet, but I really like pine wood floors. That looks more like something outside the scope. Okay? So, a handshake. I know. Isn't that great? They don't shake hands too well. This is not your grandfather's work. Somebody told me the other day that they remembered a situation when their grandfather in the sugar fields in Assumption Parish negotiated $1 million sale for his cane. And I said, that's awesome. In those days, it was like 30s, 40s, they did $1 million sale. And the guy said, yeah, they did $1 million sale. He said, you know how they did it? No. Well, they didn't bring a copier machine out there, he said. My grandfather and the man shook hands. My grandfather delivered the cane to the mill and the man paid. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore. You can't do it with other people's money. So you can't use a handshake. It's mostly has to be written contracts, written documentation. You know that infomercial that's on TV, how do you decide what life insurance to get? The 3 Ps, price, price, price. You seen that guy? I see him and I think, oh, Jesus, I don't want to hear about life insurance at 2 in the morning when, you know. But here's what I say on public bid. There's 3 Ds. Documentation, documentation, documentation. You never have enough documentation. I see Diane shaking her head. One thing I've learned from these CPAs over my time, they document everything, everything. And they ask you questions about everything. So documentation is really important. Lawyers tend to procrastinate and write the letter later. That lawyer works for you. That engineer works for you. That architect works for you. You get documentation. Can it come? It can come in a lot of ways. It can come in a letter. It can come in email, but you're going to retain that documentation for your benefit, for the benefit of the honest contractor that you're working with, and for your public. Because all that you're doing is done in daylight, transparency, and accountability. Again, Christian comes from a long line. He wants to recommend stop with the long contracts and do a handshake. Says that's the way real men do it in Victory Village. Well, that's why real men go to war. You can't do a handshake. So if I would say give Christian your best advice on the mode, here's what I would say to him. And I hope this will help you as you do your contracts. You want to always try to get them written and where you exactly say what you mean. If you don't understand it, the day you write the contract, I'm going to bet you you're not going to understand it 6 months or a year from now. So you want to make sure that those contracts are as good as you can do. Okay? Any questions on those? Yep, I'm doing good with questions.
We received money to repair our sewer pond. The bid was lower than the amount awarded. Can we piggyback to repair the lines or do a change order?
They got money to do a sewer line. Okay, and the bid was less,
Less than the amount awarded.
and they want to do more work
More
with that
work on
same
sewer.
contractor?
They didn't say if the same contractor, I think with that same award money they got.
I don't think they can do more work on that contract. They will have to use that extra money, decide what additional project they want to do. Yeah. All right, everything's going good. We'll know about handshakes. There we go. You've seen that, huh? The roof blew off. We've seen it. It's a hurricane. It's a fire. It's a storm. Something happened. We've been doing good. Christian's been working hard every day, and all of a sudden, thank God we didn't have that this year. We had enough last year to do us. He's born and raised in Louisiana. When there was a hurricane at his house, he called State Farm, Allstate, Geico, whoever, and got it done. And his mayor's saying, what do we do when there's no roof on City Hall? What do we do when the hospital got the roof torn off in Ida or Laura? What do we do when there's a flood? What do we do? So if we list the steps, what you're going to do first is you're going to distinguish between an emergency and an extreme emergency. An emergency is, it happened, we didn't anticipate it, the council's still there, and the council can meet, I can fix it, but I go back and get them to certify. An extreme emergency is, that roof blew off and none of us are coming to work the next day. We're not coming to work for the next month. What do? That extreme emergency allows you to do things without public bid. But an extreme emergency or an emergency ends. An extreme emergency or an emergency ends. It's not a lifetime event, thank God. An extreme emergency is a catastrophic event. It is something that's not ordinary at all. It's not a leak in the roof, it's the roof came off. It's not, we got a little flooding for an hour in the street. We got a dam broke, a levee broke. That's an extreme emergency. When you have an extreme emergency, there's no certification, there's no publication, but it ends. And that, to me, is where a lot of public bodies don't get it right. It ends, and you go back to normal operations. And you say, well, that's logical. Why would people not want to do that? Well, sometimes it is because their friends benefited from the emergency or the extreme emergency. I just say it. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it was easier to do it that way, we'll just keep doing it. Stop. You are Christian. You have to tell the mayor, swashbuckles, I'm sorry, the emergency's over. We're gonna go back to bidding those cars. We're gonna go back to bidding for that repair on the building. And you're going to, and I like this note here, and that's why we highlighted it, all records related to the emergency have to be kept a minimum of 6 years. That's in the statute. Now, you say, well, why should I do that? Well, here goes my next thing to tell you. Because I'm hoping you got money from FEMA. If you don't have good records, if you haven't noticed, FEMA's agents in the state change quicker than you can change the flowers in your yard. You'll call one, and they'll say, do it this way. Say no, another will say, do it that way. You want to have good, solid documentation and as to what people told you.
Should an expiration date be put on the declaration of emergency, or does a declaration need to be put out to close it?
I don't think either one. I don't think you have to put an expiration date, you know, on the local emergency, but in your ordinance, you might want to say, we're responding to this event that happened, and, you know, keep track of when that event was over. So, no, people know when the emergency ends. What they don't want to do is to go back and rebid stuff or bid stuff again. But I think that's important. Now, we had a question at the beginning, and I want to make sure that we spend some time on this. Everybody wants a computer now. Everybody, right? I mean, I went to a birthday party last week, and the little 2-year-old's birthday, and what'd they get? Baby iPads. I said, baby iPads, geez. I mean, I can hardly, it took me a while to learn how to use my iPad, and those little kids, they were twins, little boy and little girl, they advanced on that baby iPad. Everybody wants a computer. Everybody wants some telecommunication equipment. Everybody wants a camera. So here's our friend Christian again. All his purchases of computers have been on my favorite vendor, Amazon. He goes to Best Buy. I don't go to Best Buy. And Major Swashbuckle wants computers and cameras for City Hall. And there's a distributor, Johnny Fast Talk, who says he can help. I bet he can. So I want you to think about what steps should Christian take with Johnny and the mayor to secure the new electronic equipment. Does he have to bid it all? He can use what we call a request for proposal, RFP. I think that's a great way to do electronic equipment, because we're not all as talented on computers as people, as those little 2-year-olds or as third graders in the school. So what can you do with an RFP? You describe what you want done. I want computers for all my staff. I want them to have this much capability, blah, blah. And you do all of that in plain English so that the experts can bid on it and they can tell you what you need to do for that. I also, in the RFP, unlike in the bid package strictly, I can say, I want to spend no more than this, but I also have other qualities I want from this vendor. Quick repair within a certain distance of my city, qualities that are part of how you judge who you're going to pick to be that person who's going to sell you that electronic equipment. So that I think is a help. Now, the question before was on licensing and equipment. When you're buying equipment, straight out buying equipment, that is subject to public bid law. Public bid law, you could go and you can use regular public bid law, or you can do that request for proposal. That's up to you. But once you decide which one you're going to use, you have to follow it. Does that make sense? So you're getting that equipment. Now you say, and here's what I hear a lot, you got the cameras, you've been having the cameras, I'm your camera guy, says Johnny Fast Talk. Buy it from me. Can you? If Johnny Fast Talk is talking about a minor upgrade, yes, probably so. If Johnny Fast Talk is saying, I got a new, better camera system for the jail, you're probably gonna have to go out for bid.
If you're a managed service provider, buys the equipment that you procure, and they can buy it on state contract, does that work instead of the political subdivision buying it that way?
Yes, if the service provider can buy it on state contract, does that work and then you get it from the service provider? I would be surprised if the service provider could buy it on state contract unless they're a public entity. Because I think only public entities are allowed to buy off of the state procurement. Now, I think some of them tell you something, this is what I've heard, they'll say, I got the same price as on state procurement. I say, that's good. Then go talk to the people at state procurement and have them put you on the list. That's what you can do. Any other, yes, sir?
Should all bids be open in public?
Yes. The question is, should all bids be open in public? Absolutely. Transparency, I'm sorry?
Sealed bids?
That's why they're sealed. They're sealed so that they're only opened at a certain time and at a certain place. And that works even if you're accepting all the bids electronically. When you accept all the bids electronically, what we do, and what I think works, is we have a certain day and time when those bids are to come in electronically. They go into a certain place on our system and nobody looks at them until the date of the opening.
I'm new to the Gilpin House Board, and last night we had a meeting.
I'm sorry?
I'm new to the Gilpin House Board, and I'm the chairman. And last night we had a meeting, concerning the bid, and there was a saying that they go open the bid in public, that the public is gonna come to the meeting, will come to the office, and, they go open it there without the whole board being present.
It's up to the board whether they want to be there or not. But should the bids be open in public? Yes. That's separate, question. Should the bids be open in public? Yes. If everybody who bid wants to be there when you open the bids, they have a right to be there. If the man that lives down the block wants to be there when you open the bids, he has a right to be there. Yep. Good question. Good question. So we've gone through, let's see, we got a little bit more on security equipment, steps for the RFP. I recommend that you select before you, as you're beginning your RFP process, who's going to be on the committee to review the RFP? Who's going to be on it? Who's the experts that you want to review? That could be a member of the board, that could be somebody in the community, and they have their criteria that they're going to judge it by. Now, that judging of the RFP, just like what the gentleman was asking about the bid, has to be public and transparent, and those are public records. And who's going to ask you about how you did that or how you arrived at that decision? You know? The guy that lost. The guy that lost. So you want to make sure you have all your records in place, and when that man calls you or that lady calls you the next morning and says, Ms. Schaye, I want to come to your office on a day that's convenient for you to look at all of the bids that you got and why you chose my competitor. Well, after you gulp, you're going to want to say, yes, sir. I have hot coffee here waiting for you. And I'm going to lay out all that stuff on the table and let them look at it. Because if I don't, I'm going to be in violation of the public bid law. There's a chance that fella or lady is going to take me to court. And I don't like that. I don't like being on the 6 o'clock news or in somebody's Facebook ad. So you want to make sure that that's very, very good for you. Now, I've told you a lot about RFP because I think that's really important. That middle section on there is a new section that they added. Halfway, good. Thank you. Then I want to make sure that on any electronic equipment, you have the distributor sign an affidavit, which we have a template for on our website, that they don't have any certain Chinese equipment in it. That's a law in the legislature. Now, people will call me, that law's been in about a year. People say, Jenifer, I don't have a clue what's in that equipment. I know. Make the distributor sign it. He's the one getting paid. So let them sign it and certify it doesn't have that Chinese equipment in it. But that's a law that you have to have that affidavit with your purchase of that equipment. Now, they tell me I'm halfway, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a break before I go to the new laws that we have. So I'm going to just summarize, if I would, for you and Christian and myself, because I always learn more than you do by preparing these. I want to just summarize. Public bid requires sunlight. Sunlight. You cannot do it in a smoky-filled room. You cannot do it with the doors closed and nobody allowed in. Public bid requires equity. I get treated just as well as she gets treated. Equity. Doesn't mean I get every bid, but I get treated fair. Public bid requires that you understand the Constitution. I could have said that first. That you understand that it's somebody else's money, that you're not allowed to loan it or pledge it or gift it. Public bid requires that you are looking for the best product or the best construction. And public bid requires that you have an ongoing review of what you're doing. Ongoing review means you're looking at what's been done in this area, what are the changes in the law, what are things that are being said. So I just urge you to do that. And then if you do that, you're going to be 99% okay. There is going to be a 1% day when you're gonna not be happy, because there's gonna be things that go wrong. We're human beings. But I hope this helped you some. And what we're gonna do now, if I could, and I should say that Judy's got a question.
Just something to help you close out. Someone wanted to know if we can upload the slides that have all the slides in it with the answers on the website for them to get.
Yeah, Diane said they're going to be posted a few days after the thing. We didn't give you the answers at the beginning because kind of wanted you to think about it and do this presentation a slightly different way. But we think these are good bullet points and guidelines and parameters for you to use. So they're going to be out there posted. And I want you to, I hope that maybe we've provoked a little different thought and you'll call us and say, hey, let's talk about X or Y. And I'm always happy to do that. Or you might be lucky to get Patrick or Angela, who I always say they're smarter than I am, because you shouldn't hire people that are dumber than you. So I hired smart people. And Pam and Kathy, they really do everything they can to make sure that we give you the answers. And we actually, you should know this, we record your answers in something that we call internal correspondence. We write it down, what we told you, and we put the questions that we think apply to everybody in a database of questions. We do that so that we can compare what we're saying, and as the law changes, we change our answers, or at least modify our answers. So I got like 9:45. Is that what you have about? So why don't you take like 5 minutes, and then we're going to go through some changes that the legislature made in the law this last year. Thank you. Yeah. Hope everybody came back. We might be running I'm supposed to stop at 10:20. So or maybe a minute or two after, but I'm gonna try. What we did on this is we only put a slide, because I'm gonna talk to you a little bit, and then we have all of this covered in our FAQs. Here's the big change, all right? Open meetings law. We sent out that letter yesterday. Lots of people are talking about it. Let me see if I can help you with this. You do not come under, I'm gonna tell you what you don't come under. You who are towns, cities, commissions, fire districts, whatever, you only have to worry about the public participation and your council meetings, your council members' participation. This exception that allows you to have 1/3 of all your meetings be electronic does not apply to you, okay? That only applies to statewide boards. You with me? Okay, what applies to you is, and this applies to all of you, is that you have to make rules for the public participation of ADA type people, that you would have rules that would allow those disabled people to come to the meetings. Does that make sense? And if you look at the letter that we sent, then you will see that we suggest, here's some things that the rules have to say. That the rules would say that they would determine a process by which members of the public with a disability recognized by the ADA or their caretakers are to notify the entity of their desire to participate in the membership. So you would be saying that in your rules. If you're a person with a disability, here's how you notify us that you want to participate in the meeting. That you would have documentation that you require for that member, that public's solicitation of you, and that you would then develop a method by which meetings will be conducted to allow for persons with ADA recognized disability to participate. Most of you have already done that. You have ADA requirements, how to get in and all this. But what this is saying is to participate. So that would mean that I'm a disabled person, you provide a way that I can ask questions. You provide a way that I can get answers. That could be streaming, that could be Zoom, but you provide that. Does that make sense? So that's what, that would be in your rules. Now your rules would also have, and here's the big change for Louisiana. Here's the big change. Your rules would also have rules that say that members of your board can also, who are ADA, can also participate in that meeting from a place other than the ordinarily scheduled place for the meeting. They can participate from their home or wherever they happen to be. They can not only participate in the sense of watching the meeting, but they can vote, and they can make a quorum, and they can get a per diem. Vote, quorum, per diem. We've always said in Louisiana that you couldn't do that because we believe the voice vote was critical. But because of the ADA requirements that are now in the law, the member can be at home, can vote, make the quorum, participate in the meeting. Now, you might be saying, God, now wait now, who's ADA? Well, if you look at what we sent you, we also sent you the most current list of what is ADA requirements. And that is not, that's what the Equal Employment Agency has said. It's not really straight up in the ADA law. The ADA law says a limiting of a life major activity. So somebody's blind, somebody's deaf, somebody has, they can't walk, they can't, it's a very major disability. Now, are some major disabilities temporary? Yes, they are. If somebody was, for instance, in intense chemotherapy and they couldn't be exposed, then that would be a life-limiting activity, and they could be considered that they could stay home as a board member and vote. If I have a cold, that's not a life-limiting activity, all right? If I just don't want to come because I'd rather sit at my kitchen table with my jeans on and watch the meeting, that's not a life-limiting activity. So I just want to make sure that you understand that. Yes, ma'am. You're going to have to talk really loud. Yep. Yeah. 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 I'm gonna give you a real legal answer. I don't know. I just try to get as much as I can. I mean, the question is, how much documentation do you need for that board member to participate at home, making the quorum, voting, and fully participating, getting paid the per diem? I don't know. I think it's advisable to get something from the doctor that says it. I mean, I wouldn't invade somebody's privacy, but it's not, if they really have a disability, it's not that hard for the doctor to say, Jenifer Schaye's under chemotherapy today and will be for the next 6 months. Something like that. And then you have a certification that's there. Somebody says, I saw him at Walmart yesterday. That helps you. Yes, sir.
Does the law include federally recognized disabilities like attention deficit disorder?
Yes, it does. Yes. But he asked, does the law include recognized disabilities like attention deficit? Yes, it would, I think. But I think that it has to be that attention deficit has to be a life-limiting attention deficit. Many people have attention deficit disorders that are not life-limiting. So it would have to be, that's where I think the question comes, the proper certification, that this would keep the person. It's going to be gray. And it is different than the exception we had during COVID, which was that you could do that if there was a governor's declared state of emergency. This is different. This is for any board meeting that the person is participating in and they have this life-limiting activity. Okay? So you got two things, public participation in your rules and how you're going to treat the board members. If you're a state agency, you would do those rules pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act. Most of you, or maybe all of you, are not state agencies. And so you would make your rules, and I would advise that you publish your rules in the same way that you publish your ordinances, your regulations, and your minutes. You'd have it on your website, you'd publish it in the newspaper the first time, and so forth. Yes. 10 minutes. I have 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to Changes in the public records law. This is a pretty straight up one. But remember, public records law is meant for the public. So don't go hiding the records and think you're going to win, because when you go to court, you're going to lose. But what this one does is two things. There's Act 247 and Act 301. 247 says you may establish a schedule for what it would cost to produce equipment, produce materials, even electronic, and that you would publish that on your website and other places where people can see it. Act 301 addresses the question of, are school videos, the security cameras in school, is that a public record? And they say essentially it isn't. In most cases, it isn't for most people. Local Government Budget Act. How you like that one? I'm going to give Pam credit for that. Yes, sir.
Like with the minutes, can the minutes be changed during the public meeting?
Can the minutes be changed during the public meeting? Sure. Yep, then you publish the amended minutes. Yep. The question is, can the minutes be changed during a public meeting? Answer yes. Then you publish the amended ones.
If you have the minutes and something was left out in the minutes, and the secretary take a break and go and type it in. It wasn't in the minutes, you got ready to approve the minutes.
It's okay.
And it just like to type it in.
Well, the minutes have to be approved by the public body. You know, you don't have, nobody can change it after the approval. They got to come back and say, we had to change the minutes to reflect this, then they have to approve it again. Yes, sir. Yes. Local Government Budget Act, I just want to mention, this isn't any change in the law, but we continue to get so many questions on this. 5% rule. 5% rule means that if your revenues fail to meet what you think you estimated they were going to be, and that reaches the level of 5% or more, you must amend your budget. Now, there are also AG opinions that say if your revenue increases, you got extra money because of FEMA, whatever, you don't go and put it in a slush fund, you amend your budget. I think the CPAs would advise in their best practices, and I totally subscribe to, you're looking at that budget every month or every quarter, and you're amending your budget as you need to, because the budget is a real reflection of what your financial condition is. That's what you should be looking for. So people who say to me, our fiscal year ended in December, why is the auditor writing me up because I amended the budget in March? Because it means nothing to amend the budget in March when the fiscal year ended in December, right? It's just, doesn't make sense. But, it might make you feel good, but feel good in the deal. The 50% rule is important, that if you can't come to an agreement and you can't get a vote, then what do you say? The law says you can only use 50% of your last approved budget. That means you can't move money around from category to category. 50% of your last approved budget. So I say to people, start living and try to figure it out. Quasi-publics. I put this here because I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this again, because we have so many quasi-publics that we audit because they get a certain amount of public dollars. What is a quasi-public? It is not a vendor. If you buy something from somebody, that's a vendor. If you ask somebody to stand in your shoes for a certain service, that's a quasi-public. And that entity is subject to certain public laws. And so I want to make sure you know that. So if you're going to choose somebody to do something for your public entity, and they're going to stand in your shoes, they would become a quasi-public. The changes in the public bid law that I have here and that will be on the website, and we're very close to the end, are changes that the contractors more or less made. And I would urge you to look at those changes. We have them in our FAQs because they have to do mostly with timing and counting days from when certain things have to be done, change orders, punch list, and splitting. So what they have changed that I think is most significant is they changed the definition of working days and defined Monday through Friday as working days. And that's how you count in these provisions under the public bid law. You don't include Saturday and Sunday. You exclude Saturday and Sunday. Without this change, we would have to keep Saturday and Sunday in our count, but they made this as a change. It's kind of technical, but it is there. So I've gone over these top things in here for you. These are just the laws that I think cover you the most. And there weren't a whole lot of changes because it was a fiscal session. I expect that when someone asked me at the break, how do we keep up with all this? And again, I'm gonna give you the very legal answer, I don't know. We just keep trying. But they're gonna make a lot of changes in the next legislative session. And what we do is we try to keep everything going during the session so that at the end of the session, we're able to update all our FAQs. Although if something comes out in the middle, we'll also do that. And I know that Ms. Allison and others are really good at giving blast emails to all the CPAs so that they're aware of various things that happen. But we try. And I mean, there's a lot of change that can happen. And we try to make sure that what you see in our FAQs, it's dated. Like if you look at our FAQs right now, it's dated 8/23. But if we get some changes in January, even before the legislature starts, we'll change those sections. And we try to give you notice and your auditors notice. Now, I think I have maybe 1 minute. Is there anything you just ever wanted to ask a lawyer? Be kind. Yes. How is it created?
In my mind, I'm thinking about the DART board that was created 3-4 years ago.
The what?
DART, the Delta Agricultural Research and Sustainability.
Yeah.
Would that be considered part of that?
Some, yes, it could be. Some quasi-publics are created. Oh, how are quasi-publics created? Some quasi-publics are created by the legislature. Some quasi-publics are created by a parish or a city. Some quasi-publics were already there as private entities, and then they got money, and that converted them into a quasi-public. Yes, the lady on the end first.
Does quasi-public mean that you give public funding also to do?
It does.
We're an area agency on aging,
Yes,
and we're considered quasi-public.
yes,
Because we get public.
yes. The question, I'm sorry.
It's because we get public.
Yes, yes. The question is, if you like an area council on aging and you're considered quasi-public, what makes you quasi-public is because you get some public funds. Now, the auditor is only going to audit you on the public funds unless you mix the public and private funds, and we can't distinguish. You can mix them if you can categorize them in that same account. But otherwise, you know, we only will audit the public funds. But the public funds In, like, for the instance, with councils on aging, there's an office in the governor's office, and they have some requirements for the councils on aging that make them have to comply. Yes, sir.
Question comments again, specifically volunteer fire departments.
Yes.
For the city to, we have to have an intergovernmental agreement. For example, ours wants free city utilities. Does there have to be an intergovernmental agreement with that, or how do we handle that?
I think there should be, you're asking, should there be agreements between the volunteer fire department and the city? I think there should be agreements following the Cabela type reasoning that would say there's a benefit to everybody, it's not a gift, and something good's gonna come from it. Yes. But every volunteer fire department is slightly different, as you probably know.
Yeah, ours is the LLC, but they also have a taxing district.
Yes, yes. And some volunteer fire departments get a millage. And if they get a millage, then that's another issue of public money. Yes, ma'am?
Can a committee member that is not a government employee sit on a selection committee for an RFP?
Yes. Can a committee member who's not a government employee sit on an RFP selection committee? Yes. But I would provide for that in my rules as I'm setting up the RFP. Yes. I think that's a good idea.
Yes, I work for a water district, and we have to have our tower sandblasted and painted and stuff. Our engineers told us that we only had to get 2 quotes. We need 3?
Yes.
Okay.
And how much does it cost?
Well, one quote was $58,000 and one was $80,000.
You say 68 and 80?
Mm-hmm.
No, you gotta go out for public bid.
Well, is it a service or?
I think it's a public work.
Okay,
That's what I think.
okay.
I mean, somebody could make an argument that it's a service, but looks pretty much like a public work to me.
Oh, okay,
It's a serious renovation.
okay, thank you.
But the engineer, he needs to, he didn't get that right. No. I hope he can build a tower. All right, I'm joking. I'm not against engineers. Please don't say I'm against engineers.
Do open meeting laws apply to quasi-public organizations like they do public?
Sometimes. We take the position, and a lot of Attorney General opinions say this, that if you're discussing public money and the use of public money, that open meetings would apply. And I should say, open meetings, what I said to you about the change, that applies to committees and subcommittees.
Oh, what is the notification that have to be for a public bid to be, for our item to be bid on, to be on the agenda?
Depends on your rules, on the agenda
Yes,
for your meeting. It depends on
Say, if we're
your
doing a
particular.
contract with the police department and it's not on the agenda for, and they're using public funds,
Oh,
I was told by an
Okay.
attorney using public funds to bid, but you decide to bid, to add it to the agenda and bid on it at that meeting without notification of the public in
well, you
48 hours.
can't put anything on the agenda that people don't have 24 hours notice of. So you can't. And if you want to change the agenda, you have to have, if you want to change the agenda and add something to the agenda, it has to be a unanimous vote. If you want to take something off the agenda, I think it's a 2/3 vote. I'm sorry, what? Public has to be notified. We have to have it posted at the place of the meeting or, so that, or on your website. Yeah, I think somebody at the top had a question. Then I know it's over. Last question. I'm gonna stay.
If there's no voting.
If they're gonna vote,
No voting.
if they're not gonna vote?
No, it's just a discussion.
No, I don't think you have to have a quorum for that committee or subcommittee. But I tell you what you do have to do, you have to post the 24-hour notice.
Yes, I do
Okay.
understand that.
Okay.
It's just the voting. If they're
Yeah.
not gonna vote, you do not need a quorum. Okay,
I don't think so.
okay, thank you.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I hope the rest of the day is good. I know it will be. There's great people going to come up here. Thanks.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for statewide AUPs.